Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Thursday evening to you all. Hope you guys have had an awesome day so far. And I've had a great work week as we're making our way to the end of it. We're all thankful for that. About to get to the weekend. Got you a pretty big evening update this evening talking about the tropics. Normally, these evening videos have not been very exciting or anything. Nothing to really latch on to topic wise. But tonight, we have a pretty big topic, and it's the tropics. Really today, the models over the last, I would say, 12 to almost 18 hours have really become much more aggressive with the possibility of having a legitimate chance for tropical development out there in the MDR, the main development region, tropical Atlantic. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to try to see what that means necessarily. Do we have any kind of threatening scenarios? I don't think we have nothing like that to worry about right now. There's certainly no reason to worry about that. But we're going to talk about what this system can do really specifically kind of in the midterm, kind of in the mid-range, if you will. We need to figure that out first, but we're starting to have much more higher confidence of what it could possibly do between now and reaching the Lesser Antilles. And after that, we can take a look at a couple things, but with pretty low confidence, right? So we're going to go over the GFS, the European, the Canadian, the Icon, and we're going to really take a look at the ensembles and then really talk about the environmental factors preventing or promoting tropical development, because that is very important. So stay tuned to that stuff. That gets more into more of the scientific part of it, but it's really important to know and not just come on here and just show you some model guidance and roll on out. Anybody can do that on the internet, but if you guys have not subscribed, consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. If you guys got anything that I can pray about, please put it in the comments below. It gives me an opportunity to pray over it. And then more importantly, it gives a whole lot of other people an opportunity to do so too. So let's get rocking and rolling this evening. This is the National Hurricane Center, the latest outlook. So at 2 p.m., the next one's about to come out probably within the next 30 or 45 minutes. Maybe it gets upgraded to a 30%. Really, that doesn't mean a whole lot right now, but really this is where that tropical wave is, where that yellow X is. But the circled area is where it has a 20% chance to develop. I'm expecting this to increase probably within the next 12 hours, 12 to 24 hours. We'll see what happens here. But really, this is when it has a chance to really start to develop. This is kind of the geographical region we're going to speak on the most. We don't know what it's going to do after this. What we do know, and what's crazy, and I'm about to show you a comparison here later in the video, is Elsa. I don't know if y'all remember that from last year. A lot of people with kids have seen the movie Frozen because it was a pretty funny name to be added to the 2021 hurricane list. Elsa didn't form, but the origins of it started around this time last year, and it ultimately ended up making the trek across the tropical Atlantic and ended up making landfall in the Big Bend area of Florida. So it's not totally uncommon for this to happen, but it is certainly still uncommon. It's not super rare, but it's just uncommon. So let's keep rolling here. This is the satellite of what's going on. This is the wave of interest right here that will very slowly drift across the tropical Atlantic and have a chance to develop once it gets probably around the western end of the tropical Atlantic, closer to the Lesser Antilles, and then it will have a chance to take the next named storm of the 2022 hurricane season list, which would be Bonnie. So we'll see if it does this. But, does it just cruise once it gets into the Caribbean, into Central America? Does it try to turn and get a little bit further deeper into the Western Caribbean, into the Gulf of Mexico? Does it turn up here and head towards the Bahamas? We just don't know that kind of information. We're going to talk about what we have high confidence in, not necessarily what we know, but what we have some pretty high confidence in. We're getting some good burst from this wave right now. This will probably get dubbed an invest within 24 hours, if not sooner. So we're going to talk about the GFS first, and then the Euro, then go over a couple more models. GFS, latest one, which I know says, I said means nothing to me, but we got to compare and contrast these bigger global models for sure. But the Euro is next, so please hold tight. I'm going to talk about all this for you guys. This GFS is right now. So starting off, we'll start this off for tomorrow evening, so about a day from now, right? We have an L showing up here. Don't really pay attention to that. What helps us with that is just knowing where this is. It's just a big blob of moisture, so a vigorous tropical wave, if you will. This keeps moving across. We're getting into Sunday evening at this point. This is about halfway across the tropical Atlantic. This keeps moving into early next week. We're into about Tuesday evening at this point. It's Per the GFS, it's knocking on the door of the Lesser Antilles as basically still a tropical wave, maybe a depression, just an invest. Then, once it starts to get a little bit closer to the Lesser Antilles, maybe it briefly strengthens. Once it passes it, gets into the Eastern Caribbean, which normally is a very hostile area for tropical systems this time of the year with the presence of the Tut, which is normally, just think of that as an area of shear, and we've talked about shear before. Tropical systems do not like shear. It's an area of dry air also. It's basically just a tropical upper trough, if you will. But this will have a chance to strengthen maybe into a stronger depression, maybe into a low-end tropical storm. Maybe it has a brief chance about a week out from today to be our next named storm as it gets sub 1,000 millibar storm system per the GFS. So we'll stop this here and we'll jump to the European. What does the European do? So we'll start this off really around Saturday morning. Same kind of situation, about the same forward speed as the GFS. You know, we stop this around Sunday morning. It's about halfway across the tropical Atlantic. It's very slow moving. It looks more slower, but this is because the Euro on tropical tidbits is more in 3-hour intervals instead of 6-hour intervals. But we're starting to get into Tuesday morning. Here's the European. Looks like it's starting to strengthen at this point, and we keep this going. And at this point, around Tuesday evening of next week, it's a sub 1,000 millibar low pressure, maybe getting into a borderline low-end tropical storm, maybe taking that second named storm of the 2022 hurricane season, which would be Bonnie. And it's just trucking on, not really strengthening much or weakening much. And then it slams the southern end of the Lesser Antilles, almost gets really close to the northern areas of South America, but of course it probably would not do that. But I tell you what, the Euro is very aggressive, gets this thing into the Caribbean, starts to really deepen this storm, and turns it into an all-out tropical storm, and starts to speed it up and turns it into an all-out hurricane by the time we get about around 6 to 7 days out, well south of the Dominican Republic and the Greater Antilles. So the Euro is going all out with this. It really is. It gets this into the Caribbean and turns this into a very strong hurricane, actually, and really hones in. If I would have kept that going and really moved basically the model output into the Western Atlantic, you would have saw a very strong hurricane affecting areas of Central America. Canadian, which isn't necessarily a super reliable tropical model here, really by the time we get to Tuesday morning, has this thing developing into an all-out tropical storm, but it really wants to move it a little bit further north, has it as an all-out tropical storm hitting areas of the Lesser Antilles as we get into Wednesday evening, and then it really quickly turns it northwest and makes landfall in Haiti, the Dominican Republic, as maybe a low-end hurricane, and then heads towards the Bahamas and starts to maybe threaten the southeast. But that's the Canadian model. It's not a super respectable model as far as the tropical weather. It's just guidance at this point. The latest Icon model, same kind of deal, has a tropical system. It's basically like a strong tropical wave, low-end tropical depression out here. Starts affecting the Lesser Antilles as we're getting to Thursday, and then we stop it right there. But here's the thing: we looked at all that guidance, right? All this model guidance, the GFS, Euro, the Canadian, the Icon, all these show kind of a similar situation. So we'll have to see what happens here. Model guidance has certainly increased. This could be our next named storm. This could be Bonnie. It really is. So we'll keep moving forward. I'll show you one example, and this is the European. What does the European does once it gets past the Lesser Antilles and gets deep into the Caribbean? Well, here it is. Right at this point, we'll stop it right here. This is overnight. This is about 7 days out from right now. It's right smack in the middle of the Caribbean, strengthening and turning into probably a Category 2 hurricane and making landfall in Central America. But it pretty much the entirety of the life of this tropical system moves it at basically a due west motion. So basically an east to west motion. It never turns this up, which is odd because the Euro is a much more stronger systems, and a lot of times tropical systems move more poleward, meaning they move more north on the northern hemisphere. When they're stronger, they move more north and try to For example, when you have a ridge of high pressure, they try to ride the bases of that high pressure. They kind of control their own destiny, if they will, when these storms are stronger. So it's kind of weird that the European really shoves this deep into the Caribbean, but it might, it just tells you, hey, if we look at basically the 500 millibar heights, you have some decent ridging going on here. So it doesn't want to really move northwest at all with ridging on top of this. Now, if you look at the Canadian, which is that much more aggressive scenario, it still has ridging up top, but it's a little bit more weaker, and it kind of gets lost in weaker ridging and really starts to slow down as it's a tropical storm moving through the Bahamas around 10 days from now, which, it's hard to say if that's a legitimate chance of happening. So let's look at the European EPS cyclone location. So this is basically our line chart of where all these ensemble runs could go. Now, obviously, this is going to be one system. It takes a bunch of runs, and then it plots a line graph and trying to figure out where this is going to go. But in general, look at this. Look at all these runs. All of them shoot it into the southern sections of the Lesser Antilles. All of them get them into the Gulf. Some of them do get them into the Gulf of Mexico, but almost all of them get them into the Caribbean. If this develops, they like all cruising into the Caribbean. But you notice 10 days out, you got some strong members to get into the Gulf of Mexico, pushing, sub 980 millibar low pressures, which are pushing a hurricane at that point. So I'm not telling you we have a threatening scenario in hand or anything like that, but I'm telling you this is the same kind of setup that Elsa showed, and I'll show you exactly what I mean right now. So Eric Blake posted this, and it was awesome that he kept it because it gives us something to really compare and contrast. But what you're looking at right here is actually what we saw last year. This was the beginning of what ended up briefly being Hurricane Elsa right off the coast of Tampa Bay. Same kind of setup. And look at the date, June 23rd, 2021. It's the same date as today, but a year from now. We had this same kind of signal a year ago. It's incredible. This ended up actually being a legitimate threat, and it ended up actually putting a threat on the Big Bend areas, and it made landfall as a pretty strong tropical storm in the Big Bend area of Florida. Now, if we look at the threat now, this is the threat today, right? I wouldn't call it a threat, but this is the possibility today. Same kind of signal, right? Except it's a lot more aggressive. You have much more members liking the idea of a system developing in general. So it's incredible. It really is. So that's why you got to watch out for these. It seems like over the last few years, even in prime hurricane season, in the middle of the peak hurricane season, we haven't had a lot going on in the main development region. But this just goes to show you that when stuff can get going out there and you have a big time blocking a ridge of high pressure up here steering these systems into into a threatening idea, more populated areas, landmass is what I'm trying to say, then you got to watch out. This is a situation where you got to watch out. If you're in Jamaica, if you're in Cuba, the Lesser and Greater Antilles, you got to watch out Central America. And then on down the road, maybe 10 to 14 days from now, watch out the Gulf, watch out the Southeast. You cannot sit here and say that that's not going to happen, because it certainly can. So let's talk about the environmental factors going on. Now, this is getting a little bit deeper into what's preventing or promoting tropical development. So in general, this is the 200 millibar wind stream. So this shows a lot of things that maybe we don't see when we just look at satellite or anything like that. So let's just go on and stop it right here. This is around Saturday morning. You see this little dip right here in these colors? This blue right here, this is shear. Thinking this is shear about 20, 30, 40 knots of shear. So tropical systems do not like that. When they get wrapped up in that, it really shears away and shreds their convection and doesn't allow for more convection to get going. And normally is what happened. It's what happened when we had Alex. Make sure I said the right name. When we had the first tropical system that ended up affecting areas of southern Florida a few weeks back. A lot of shear on the western side really just made it like a half of tropical storm. All the convection was on one side. That's one thing shear can do in these situations, but it also can prevent development altogether. But a lot of times this time of the year, you have what we call a TUT. It's basically a tropical upper level low out here. It provides a lot of vertical shear. dry air, and in general, this likes to kind of bow its ugly head. And well, it's a good thing actually, but it likes to bow its head into areas of the Caribbean, the Southwest Atlantic in general, and actually helps to limit tropical development this time of the year. That's why, another reason why they call the Eastern Caribbean right here the hurricane graveyard or the tropical graveyard. Well, in general, one thing promoting it in the short to midterm is you have an anticyclone over this area. And basically that is wind directions on top of this low pressure going in opposite directions. What that does is it promotes rising of air. It helps basically ventilate this storm. We call this a ULAC. And basically, this is an anticyclone that spins around the opposite directions. And basically think of this as more favorable wind patterns for these tropical systems. So you have that actually on top of the storm or around the storm, helping to ventilate the storm, promoting development. You typically don't have that this time of the year in the tropical Atlantic, and that is because you have also a favorable phase. You have a phase in place where it's promoting rising air. And we'll talk about that here in a second. A favorable MJO phase. This is getting really deep into it, guys. I know I'm probably losing some of you guys. Trust me, I'm always learning new things, and I haven't mastered any of the things I'm talking about. I'm always learning new things. But in general, you look at this tut right here that's kind of moving into the Eastern Caribbean. And I will tell you, this could change. But as this tropical system moves into that area, that tut lessens. It actually gets displaced and moves way out here in the subtropical area. So you don't really have a tut influence on this system. Therefore, shear lessens in this area. A little bit to the south of it, but I mean, that's always a factor. And this moves in, and actually you get this thing, whatever gets into the Eastern Caribbean or Caribbean, actually has a decently favorable environment for development. So that's the concern. Is this, if this thing survives in the short term and kind of the mid range, if it gets into the Caribbean, it might have a favorable environment to really get going. So let's talk about phasing. So what you're looking at here is the yellow or the oranges or the reds right here. That is sinking air. This moves basically from west to east. So right now in the blue, if you look at the dates, it'll go all the way to the current date. Right now, we're in a favorable phase in this blue, which is for more rising air. This helps convection, and this tropical system is actually, let's see if we can pause this really quick and go on and move to the current time. This MJO phase, if you will, is promoting the uprising of air, and this tropical system is moving right through this phase. So this is actually helping to also promote development with this. So last couple things we'll talk about is this, really the last thing we'll talk about, and then I'll let y'all go, is the chances from the EPS Ensemble of development of a tropical storm, not a depression. So we'll go on and stop it right here. This is for Friday morning. So there is above a 70% chance that we'll have above a 75% chance that we'll have tropical storm Bonnie in the Eastern Caribbean around this time, well, about 7 days from now. So that's a pretty high chance. Now this could change. So that's pretty much all I got. We'll take another look at this thing right here. Here it is, still popping off convection. I tell you what, the models have really tried to catch up with this today as convection has maintained. A lot of model guidance was thinking that the convection would back off, but it's maintaining. Therefore, the models have adjusted it today, and that's why you basically had the more aggressive scenarios today, because it's trying to catch up with what actually is happening out there in the tropical Atlantic. But that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in, and you guys have a great evening, and I'll talk to y'all in the morning.